to me, whole cluster adds a whole other element to the wine. It adds complexity, depth, texture, body, weight. Did I say complexity? Like, it definitely makes the wines more interesting. Kind of my short version of the spiel on whole cluster when I'm talking to folks, either in the cellar or in the tasting room, or out showing the wines. This whole cluster brings three main things to the table. You get added aromatics. It really enhances the aromatics of what's already there. I used to think whole cluster just added spice aromatics because there's a definite correlation with stem inclusion and aromatic spice. But now I'm of the opinion, with all things in wine, your opinions and ideas kind of evolve. And, I think now that stems just really kind of accentuate whatever's there already and enhance the aromatics that you begin with. So I always get a lot of enhanced aromatics, spice aromatics, those really kind of interesting sort of chaparral and herb de Provence and, qualities that I really love in old world wines. I find that we can achieve here with stem inclusion, in California. So aside from the aromatics, you get a textural impact as well from the stem inclusion. The stems really add almost like a lacquery weight to the wine, like a mouth coating textural quality, where the wine really just builds that mid-palate weight and gives you a little more body, a little extra richness, more of that kind of smooth, almost saline, velvety mouthfeel quality. So we have aromatics, we have mouthfeel, and then you get the extra tannin from the stems as well. And it's a little counterintuitive because you think the stems are going to be hard or bitter or astringent. And in my experience, they can be, I guess, but in my experience, they add some focus, some structure to the wine. There's generally never any shortage of fruit in California wines, so it's nice to have that extra structure and body to support it. And I'm always kind of blown away at just how counterintuitive it is that you add these extra stems and you do have more tannin, but the result is kind of a richer, more textural mouthfeel experience. I think it's really well suited for Rhone varietals. At SAMsARA, we use whole cluster fermentation in all our red wine production. The Pinot Noirs generally have 50 to 75% stem inclusion. The Rhone wines are typically 100%, although there are some small deviations from that. But I'm big on stems. The SAMsARA wines kind of have been built around that style of winemaking, with the goal being to make powerful wines that are powerful in a kind of overripe, fruity way.
Right.
So the stems really help us achieve that. We build that big mid-palate that I was talking about. They allow us to get those spicy aromatics that we love and those savory flavors. So Syrah, Grenache, absolutely. Pinot Noir for sure. You'd have a hard time convincing me that for any red wine production it would be better or more complex without stems. My favorite variety, I think, like I said, it makes everything better.
Right.
But I'm really excited about whole cluster Syrah. And that's something that I've been excited about for a number of years. But with the SAMsARA lineup of Santa Rita Hills Syrah sites, these cool climate Syrah sites, they're so well suited for whole cluster winemaking. And that's another kind of important point, is the vineyard site really dictates a lot of what you're able to do with stem inclusion. Because we work with so many cool climate vineyards in Santa Rita and kind of throughout Santa Barbara, those vineyards tend to come in with higher acidity and lower pH. and you really need to start with that good low pH number and a lot of natural acidity, because the stems do raise the pH of the wine. So for the wines to finish at a balanced pH, you really got to start with a lot of acid and a pretty low pH number. And then my favorite wines that are made with whole cluster, I'm going to go with Côte Rôtie, Gamay. I got to do a trip to the Northern Rhone a couple of years ago with a group of winemakers, and the California winemakers presented their wines to the French guys, and Jamay's comment to me was, "This is good, but why didn't you use more stems?" And I was like, he's got a good point. It would be better with more stems. Why didn't we use more stems? And that's probably what I'm most excited about with the degree of whole cluster fermentation that we use here at SAMsARA, is I'm into it and I believe in it. I'm excited to kind of put my money where my mouth is and pursue that direction aggressively. Kind of like many things in the winery, a little trial and error. I think in 2005 I first experimented with whole cluster. The 2006 vintage rolled around, and the winemaking team thought that we didn't like it. But by the time 2007 came around, those 2005 wines that we had experimented with stem inclusion on have really blossomed into these beautiful wines. And that's another kind of important point here with whole cluster, is it takes a lot of time to integrate. So the wines can be kind of stemmy and aggressive and aggressively spicy and herbaceous, and kind of dominated by that stem quality as young wines. And then as they evolve in barrel and then even in bottle, those qualities really seem to integrate, and you don't get any of the kind of the negative green qualities associated with stems, but you get all those nice things that we were talking about earlier. So this is Larner Vineyard Grenache, Larner Vineyard in Ballard Canyon. I remember it was a very cold morning, the morning these grapes were picked, kind of late in the season. But we did this 100% whole cluster. So the fruit was lightly foot stomped just to get it juicy. And we do all native fermentations. So this one actually did take quite a few days to start because the fruit came in so cold. But it fermented for about 3 weeks, slow fermentation. And I'm really pleased with the Grenache from 2017. I think it's a pretty nice vintage all in all, but with the Grenache we really sort of hit it on the bullseye. And Larner Vineyard Grenache is some special stuff. Very well farmed. But I love just kind of like the brambly, spicy quality of this wine, and it's a little deceiving because it's got sort of a mid-weight color. It's kind of that garnet, kind of almost a little lighter. I don't want to use that word, but this wine's anything but light on the palate. You really get a lot of intensity and power and focus, and I think a lot of that's from the stems. There's some guts to this wine, a lot of stuffing.
It's really beautiful.
Do we look for certain things in the vineyard when we determine how much whole cluster we're going to do, or if we're going to do it? I wish I had a better answer, because the short version is no. And I think whole cluster is one of those things of which there are a lot of in the winemaking world, where it's hard to wrap your head around it completely. I've made some really beautiful wines with 100% whole cluster with neon green, bright stems. And the stems tasted green, and the wine might have been a little green and a little herbaceous as a young wine, but all that kind of integrated over time. And that particular wine that I have in mind, an 07 Mourvedre, is still one of my favorite wines that I've ever made. For me, I think it's some of the other qualities or the other factors that are more important in determining whole cluster, like how the vineyard is farmed, what kind of pH and acidity the fruit's going to come in with. The way we farm most of our vineyards with Coastal is there's a lot of exposure in the fruit zone. So the stems generally do lignify and get a little bit of color. Would I be scared of a green stem? No, I would still, I might hedge my bets a little and do some of it whole cluster and then some of it, some combination of destemmed and whole cluster fruit. But that's something I tend to do anyway, just to come up with more pieces to work with, which helps facilitate blending and kind of building those layers of flavor like we talked about. But yeah, I really don't look at stem maturity as a determining factor for how much whole cluster to use. It's more of my knowledge of the vineyard, if the fruit has powerful flavors, if I think the flavor spectrum of what whole cluster brings to the table is going to be a positive contribution to what's already going on in that vineyard.